What's up, people? I'm downstairs in my house tonight because it's freezing, and the downstairs just holds the heat better somehow. It's a little ironic because hot air rises, so you might expect the upstairs to be warmer. My shelf color is not coded. My shelf is not color coded, but rather my wife had the idea to organize the books in a color coded way, if that's what you mean. All right, that'll do. This is my first live stream back since Christmas. It's been a while. Did I see the Moldbug meme Twitter thread on color-coded shelves? I don't know if I recall. I'm just gonna give everyone a little bit of time to get in here. I sent out a link to the Discord. What's up, John? My previous background was painterly, very beautiful, but this is a very poor aesthetic. Well, you know, you can't win them all. You're gonna have to brace yourself for possibly a lot of different background changes, because I literally don't know where I'm gonna be in 2 or 3 months. So I could be on the road, I could be homeless, I could be staying with a friend on a couch. It could be that bad. No, I don't think it will, but oh shit, I forgot to watch this. Am I aware of the book The Revolutionary Phenotype? What do you think about that whole subject? I'm aware of it, but I have not read it and could not even really comment on it generally. All right, folks, so the topic of tonight's stream will be no topic in particular. If you're here for focused, structured learning content, then go check out Khan Academy and get the hell off my YouTube channel, because that you're not going to be getting this evening. This evening I'd like to talk about a few different things. Many of you might be checking in because you're curious to know what's going on with my situation. And unfortunately, I don't have really any new information. I could give you some updates about what I'm doing and what I have in the works, but if you're looking for factual updates about the drama of my let's call it conflict with my employer, I don't have anything new since the last stream, though I might maybe here and there drop some more details. But my thinking has probably evolved somewhat. My resolve, I'd say, has hardened. On the other hand, I'm now in the middle of a very complex game because I have all these different stakeholders, let's say, in my life that I have to be responsible towards. So for instance, you might have seen in the past week I've been talking a lot about doing a Kickstarter. If you're one of my patrons, then you'll know that I'm thinking very seriously about this. And I am pretty much decided that I would really like to do a Kickstarter. I think it would make a lot of sense right now. I think I have a really good book idea that I would really like to write, and now would be an excellent time to do it. And I think it would be an interesting way to deal with or respond to the threatening posture of my university towards possibly seeking to fire me, I think just writing a book about the whole situation would be the most forthright way to deal with it. And so that's what I would like to do. And I'm more and more leaning towards doing something like that very, very soon, to the degree that that's basically the main thing I'm planning and working on right now, is actually drafting the outline for that book, and even drafting some of the content of that book, and talking with my patrons and other associates about what would be the best way to frame it and conceptualize it. So that's basically what I'm working on right now, and I'm very excited by that. I think it's a really good idea, and I'm basically prepared to do that even if I were to be fired. I'm not supposed to talk about the details of the case at all. I'm supposed to be confidential, but basically, I think the value of the story is greater than the costs that I would suffer from being fired. Because as I've said many times on this stream before, I mean, academia can maybe be good for some people, but for the type of intellectual I am, it's just it's not really worth fighting to stay inside of, in my view. And so that's what I'm doing or looking to do. But the problem is, it's very tricky because I don't really know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're really trying to fire me. I don't know if they would even succeed in trying to fire me. I don't know if, I mean, I also have a grievance that's being lodged against them for a bunch of things that they've done incorrectly and badly throughout the process. So there's no telling if that, you know, I think I actually have like quite a strong grievance, but who knows how that would pan out. And then another little bit of information is, so I was getting really excited about this Kickstarter idea, and really I've been developing it the past few days, because I'm thinking about doing it like immediately, ASAP, as soon as I can possibly get it off the ground in a really polished and effective way. Because a Kickstarter campaign is, to do it right, it's a real process. You have to really plan it out and cross all your T's and dot all your I's to make it work. So I would do it as soon as I could get away with, basically. And although that's what I would like to do, I recently hit a possible roadblock. I'm not sure if it's going to be a serious roadblock, but basically my agent, I told you before on here that I do currently have a literary agent for a different book, and he's a very good agent with like a top agency, a top New York literary agency. I do have a contract with him for a separate book that I've been working on for a while, and he's cool. I mean, he's totally cool. I like him, and he's good. However, he did not like the idea that I might do a Kickstarter. In the like traditional publishing world, you generally don't want to have two books at the same time because they see them as competing with each other. So I totally get that, and basically, we're exchanging emails and we're talking about it. We're talking it out. I wouldn't do anything that would really seriously violate his expectations, because we do have a contract, and I'm a pretty reckless, carefree guy, but I do try to be responsible to my agreements. So that was a bit of a surprise and possible obstacle, but he's cool, and I think he understands that the current media landscape is not what it used to be. I mean, is self-publishing a book through Kickstarter, is that even like a competing book title? I mean, in some sense, I think it's more like it's like a monetized blog or a paywalled podcast, or something like that, or like a where exactly the format of the book ends, and all of these new weird digital things that plenty of authors are doing nowadays, and where those begin and where the book ends is, I don't know, it's just increasingly blurry. So I really don't see how me doing a Kickstarter for a fun, kind of shorter project, such as a book about academia and the internet and kind of my current affairs, I don't think a short, punchy book like that would be in any way a problem for the success of this other longer, more serious book that I'm working on. So I'm hoping that he and I will come to an understanding, and if we can, then yeah, I would be looking forward to doing a Kickstarter ASAP, and I've kind of been tweeting about it a little bit. And if you're a patron, then you already know this. But basically, the gist of the book that I want to write right now, kind of around my current experiences, it would basically be part memoir, part theory, part social science, basically trying to explain how things look from my perspective as an academic, who's also now kind of one of the many people facing, I'm not going to give you this whole like persecution narrative. In fact, I'm trying to do the opposite. But I'm one of these like one of these many narratives going on right now of academics basically running into some sort of ridiculous constraint having something to do with what is called political correctness or just general sensitivity in the university, and now having to decide what to do and possibly being fired or having to carve out some other route. And one of my main motivations is that I'm just so tired of the standard genre. It's become like a genre now of like persecuted academic. Oh, I'm going to lose my job. Please help me. Save me. Everyone write letters of support for me. Give me money. Like it's sort of like this, it's this mold now. And the political correctness of universities is really bad. And so this kind of thing does happen more and more. But if you've been paying any attention to this for the past few years, and you have like at all if your theory of the world or your model of the world is at all well calibrated to the situation, then you should be a few steps ahead of this, I would think, personally. At least that's how I feel I am. Not that I'm not saying I'm like smarter than anyone or I have a better diagnosis than anyone, but what I am saying is that when I look at the next iteration of this genre, whenever a new case emerges where some academic might be fired for some ridiculous nonsense, when I see that, I'm not surprised at all. I've seen this many times. One should be prepared for that. And in fact, what I'm thinking is quite different, I think, than what a lot of other people, like Peter Boghossian, for instance, like his case right now, which is kind of the scandal du jour at the moment. Very similar, really. Does a provocative thing, might be fired for it. There's an outrage. But what's interesting about his case is, he put out a video about it, actually, and I watched it, and it's kind of interesting to see how people frame these things, because it's the typical form. And I have nothing against Peter. I've never met him, but definitely generally support what he's doing, obviously. But so I'm not even going to be talking about his case or anything like that. But thinking about it as an example of this type of phenomenon, he's just another one of the many examples. There's a kind of automatic genre that these things fall into, which is, oh my gosh, this is unfair. I'm in the right. The university is overreacting, and this is a kind of moral, it takes on a kind of moral drama to it. And then, so there's indignation, it's very much kind of within the outrage dynamics. It's within the outrage cycles. And I might be sympathetic to it much more so than other stuff that kind of participates in the outrage cycles or the outrage phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. But it's a played out genre to me. It's a played out form, and to me that always indicates that creative thinking has been replaced by some sort of script. And I think I'm always interested in what is the next play, like what is the next way of doing it that hasn't been done yet. And so yeah, I have a very different perspective. Like when all this stuff started happening to me, my feeling and attitude and response to it was it's very different than what you see from someone like Peter Boghossian right now. Like in the video that he put out, I just can't relate to how he's seeing it. And so what I want to do, I'll answer that in just a second about the rap song. So what I want to do is, I just want to figure out, why do I have such a different attitude? Why do I see it so differently? And I want to explicate it and flesh it out. And I think it'd be really fun and interesting and worthwhile, both as a kind of personal exploration, if you will, to try to figure out where exactly I am in my own life, but through that to tell a much larger story about what exactly is going on in academia right now, and the larger kind of distribution of power with respect to intellectual influence and the internet. and my hypothesis is, or well, I have a few hypotheses, and I think that this perspective just isn't popular enough, or it's not, it's a relatively underrepresented way to view this situation, and so that's why I feel quite motivated to want to explicate it. But you probably know what it is if you've been watching me at all for any time in the past. My view basically boils down to the fact that I'm not even sure academia is worth it anymore. So, and I've been thinking this. I mean, who wants to have a job where this sort of stuff can happen at any time? Like, even if you can kind of mobilize a bunch of people to write letters of support and have a big protest, and you make your administrators back down, even if you can do that, that might be a great victory for you in that one particular day. You get to keep your job, but think about where you are fighting to keep yourself in. Like, who wants to? I don't know. I don't want to be a part of that. To me, that all of these episodes are just so pathetic. I just find it so embarrassing that academia has become this kind of nonstop this place of nonstop just childish sensitivity and political correctness and overreaction. I mean, it's very, very clear from the inside that it's basically all about liability. There's no real kind of deep political story. I mean, there is a deep political story to that in some sense, because there definitely is a much larger historical narrative around liability. But in the day-to-day kind of phenomenology of it, these bureaucrats are just afraid of getting in trouble, whether it be sued or whatever. So it's really quite simplistic kind of herd psychology of the basest kind, and the most common kind. I mean, it's almost uninteresting, the basic reality of what people are doing on the end of the political sensitivity within academia. But the much larger story is that the more academia does this, the less it's even, the less that like genuine intellectual people are ever even going to want to step foot in it. So the only real outcome of what we're watching right now is that academia will be evacuated of intelligence in the long run, and the long run is looking increasingly short, I would say, or increasingly quick. It's increasingly quick to get to long run kind of equilibrium dynamics. I think it's impossible to avoid this kind of situation. And so my view is like, yeah, I guess I could try to get Steven Pinker and Richard Dawkins to write letters of support for me and make this whole big protest. I'm going to lose my job. I'm in the right. The university's in the wrong. Please, everyone, see this through a moral frame, and let's save my career in academia. Like, yeah, I guess I could try to do that, but that's honestly never once come to my mind as a way of dealing with this, just because it's just not worth it, really. And the more and more I do the internet stuff, the more and more I'm kind of like, okay, this is obviously all I've ever really wanted out of life. I guess if what you want is, sorry folks, by the way, it's kind of hard for me to keep up with the chat because I'm using my iPhone. So yeah, if I don't get to something, sorry about that. But yeah, so especially because all this internet stuff I've been doing, it's basically everything I've ever wanted out of an intellectual life. I guess if you went into academia because you want status and money, then yeah, I guess like YouTube is not gonna like be as attractive to you. But all I've ever really wanted is to spend my life thinking as hard as I can and as radically and fearlessly as I can, and then producing and expressing the products of my intellectual searching, to just try to find what I can as deeply as I can, and to share it in the most effective way, and to do that as much as I can, as intensely as I can. I mean, that's what an intellectual life is, as far as I'm concerned. And so if that's what you want to do, then what I already have set up for me, my blog, YouTube, whatever it might be, or if YouTube goes away, whatever the next kind of contemporary open internet forum is, whatever that might be, I'm already up and running on these new intellectual machineries, and I don't think that academia has anything to offer me that the internet doesn't already. And it has a lot of nonsense and kind of cognitive taxation that the internet doesn't have. So, yeah, when I started to get into trouble in academia, I was just kind of like, um, it felt like a blessing. It really based, like, phenomenologically, it was purely positive affect. It was just, I got to do more of what I was already doing and do it more freely, and I just kept writing, kept making videos, kept doing my thing. Yeah, so what I'd like to write a book about is how I see this, and because it seems to be very rare. It seems to be, if you look at all of the other academics who have gotten into trouble recently for something that they said because of some type of um, political correctness or whatever. I know that's a corny word, but kind of just is the phrase for what's going on. Almost every single case, the academic kind of protests. And yeah, I've just never felt any emotional intuition or drive to protest. Yeah. And I want to figure out why. It could be because I'm a different type of person, and that might be partially it, but I think, and I can't know for sure, but I think it's because I see a few things a little bit better than a lot of other people. And I think that's in part because I'm younger. I'm very young for where I'm at in academia. And I think because of that, one, I'm a little bit closer to the youth cultures, I guess. And the youth cultures right now are all, the internet. Like nowadays, like if you talk to like a 13-year-old or something like that, like, and even if they're smart, like super smart or whatever, super capable, and you ask them like, what they want to be when they grow up or whatever, like none of them are saying, I want to be a professor. Like they're saying they want to be on YouTube, and I'm not saying that like the spectacular dreams of children should be the yardstick for how we choose to live our lives or what goals we should pursue. I'm only saying this is a barometer of which way the wind is blowing with respect to, where the actual place of culture is going to be, where the actual determination of cultural change and social public activity, like where the action is. It's an indication of where the action is and where it's moving towards. And I think I maybe see that a little bit more kind of deeply than a lot of older academics. I'm younger, so that lets me kind of be a little bit more comfortable with risk. I could afford to lose my job, and I could basically afford to restart in a new career, and I could basically transition. I could use my PhD to transition into something else. I definitely will take an income loss for sure, at least in like the first year or whatever, as I'm transitioning. And I'll probably have to start kind of lower down on some ladder if I were to take that route. But I'm confident I'd find something, and I'm young enough and skilled enough that, don't get me wrong, it's going to be stressful and it's a little scary, and it could be bad potentially financially. But since I'm younger, I'm a little bit more willing to consider that risk, I guess, is one reason why I'm kind of seeing this in a very different way. And yeah, and I think also, with all due respect, I'm a pretty nice guy. I try not to shit on people. But there is also the issue that a lot of academics are cowards, really. A lot of them are really mostly interested in the status and the income and just the security. So, hey, whatever, play whatever game you want. People play different games, but if that is what you're mostly interested in, it means that there are going to be empirical phenomena happening around you that you're not really able to fully describe and not really fully able to enter into. And so yeah, I feel like, as a writer, like if you're a writer or whatever, you're always kind of looking or surveying the scene of your life and everything around you, what you're observing and reading, but also what you're experiencing. And I feel like good writers will always look for like what in their experience, what in their particular perspective is unique and valuable. That intersection of being truly unique to you and potentially of great significance possibly to other people. You're always kind of looking for that. And for me, I think this right now is this topic, or this issue, the set of interlinked issues, I guess, that I was just describing. I would say for me in this very moment, that's kind of the most significant or publicly valuable and I think interesting set of issues or questions that I'm personally, temperamentally, and also just because of my unique kind of chance circumstances, I think I'm uniquely well poised to tell a very interesting story around these questions that is not what you're generally getting from a lot of other academics who have found themselves in my position. But yeah, hopefully I can smooth that over with my literary agent, and if I can convince him that it's not a problem for me to write a self-published, crowdfunded book, then a Kickstarter on that will be going ahead quite soon. So if you have any input on that, please do send me a message. I'm in major brainstorm mode for thinking about how to, thinking of a title and thinking of a kind of outline and how to plan it. So more than happy to hear if you have any input on that. So that's the big update. That's my plan. That's what I want. That's what I'd really like to do next. And I have to just hopefully come to some sort of understanding with my agent. And if I can't, if he's really upset about this idea and says he really doesn't want me to do this right now while he's trying to sell the other book, then I can still do it, but I'll do it later or whatever. Or maybe I'll just blog it or whatever. So, yeah, what else? Maybe we'll talk about New Year's resolutions. I don't do New Year's resolutions. Although, I guess I kind of actually do have a New Year's resolution this year. My New Year's resolution is to smoke more weed. I think I really benefit from it, and I don't do it enough. I actually do it very rarely. And I think, especially where I'm at in my life right now, it tends to be correlated with very positive consequences, both at the time of doing it, but even like the next day. I have found that in the past couple of years, smoking weed has been very good for me, and so I would like to do more of it. That's why I'm kind of like, if I get fired, I'm like, I kind of want to move somewhere back to the States where it's cheap and where weed is legal. I want to smoke more weed, and I want to work less. That's always one of my resolutions, though, work less. And I usually don't do it. But, I mean, if I were to get fired, I could maybe be working much less. Too much less. If you asked me a question before in my ranting and I didn't catch it, you could try again and ask me. I could try to answer now. What else? Oh, so I'm going to, on this weekend, I'm going to see the Pope. I've been asked to visit the Vatican by the Pope at Pontifex. He DM'd me the other day. He said, yo, bro, come on over. No, I'm just kidding about that part. But I'm not kidding that I'm going to Rome. I'm going to Rome this weekend. And that is because my life is so crazy right now. I have to account for all these different possibilities. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it does look like my university is very unhappy with me, and it looks like they're going to try to fire me, I think, is what's happening. And if that happens, I would have to get out of the country, basically. In some sense, they'd be kicking me out of the country, so I would have to go back. Oh yeah, Kickstarter and create space integration. How would that work? I'll answer that in just one question, real quick. Let me finish my thought. So basically all I was getting at is, oh yeah, and the rap song. Those two. I'll get to both of them. Basically, if there's some chance that I get fired, I need to do, my wife and I want to do every last thing that we wanted to do kind of on our like European bucket lists. So I need to visit the seat of the Catholic Church, and one of obviously the most significant cities in all of Europe. So I've never been to Rome, and neither has my wife. So we're like, shit. If there's some chance that we're gonna get kicked out of the country in like a week, then we had a long think about like, well, what is there anything that we haven't done that we really, really want to do in Europe that we would really be upset if we didn't do? And we decided we were thinking about going to Athens, but I've already been there, so we decided to do Rome. So hopefully I'm going to get some time with the Pope. I mean, I've messaged his people, asked him if he wants to do the live stream. I'm hoping he's going to say yes, but even if he can't do the live stream, I'm sure he'll have some time to receive me personally. And yeah, I'll let you know. I mean, if you have any questions for him, you could let me know. I'll try to run them by him. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's basically the only place in Europe that I haven't been yet that I've really been wanting to go to. I'm going to take some pictures and stuff like that. So, stay tuned. Right, so the questions that you were asking me. One question was, right, how does Kickstarter and CreateSpace work? That's a very, very good question. And apparently that kind of connection has not really been made that much. So if you look at I've done so much research on this, so actually if any of you have questions about Kickstarter campaigns, I'm actually at the moment a bit of an expert because I've basically read every kind of strategy article and data article that's been written in the past few years about how to do a successful Kickstarter campaign. So, and I've looked specifically into how people do book publishing, and most of them do not do Kickstarter funding and then print on demand, because those two don't really combine very well, or they don't combine very intuitively. So what most people do is, if you do a Kickstarter to publish a book, then usually what you'll do is you'll have it printed yourself, because it's way cheaper to do a big load of, like one big print run of a load of books. You get those sent to you, and then you mail them out manually to the people who pre-ordered your book through Kickstarter. That's the most common way to do it. Will Kickstarter allow the funding of its own competitor? Not sure what you mean. Oh yeah, with Amazon. Yeah, I don't think they have anything against it. There are no rules against this. But I've asked around, because this was my intuition also, to what would be ideal is do a Kickstarter to fund the costs of the book, like a designer and an editor and all of that. But then you deliver it to the backers by putting it on Amazon. And that way you could basically do the Kickstarter and you get the benefits of a Kickstarter model, but then you also can do a launch on Amazon. And there are basically like a bunch of strategic factors behind doing an Amazon launch also that you have to kind of plan for to do well, and to like play the algorithms, and because you have to do that, because if you don't, then your book won't be seen by people or whatever. But if you do it well, then your book can be seen by a lot of people and do well. So it's all kind of part of the game, and it's actually quite an interesting game. I mean, it's quite fascinating. I've been enjoying learning about this world. The idea of just writing books myself and publishing them myself, I have to admit, I've become incredibly enchanted by the idea. I mean, I'm incredibly excited by it and inspired by it. Seriously, like, my heart is starting to race right now, because I really fucking hate dealing with like middlemen. I hate having to ask permission. I hate it. I really am so fed up with it in my life right now, with academia, with my history of like left-wing activism. I feel like most of my adult life I have been wasting my capacities on asking permission from people who are dumber than me, with all due respect. And I'm sick of waiting. I'm sick of asking permission. And even when you succeed and you get the institutional approval you need to move forward on your project, even then, even in the best cases, you have to wait, and then you have to wait again, and then there's all these annoyances, and it's just like, I'm fucking so tired of it. I shudder to think about how much of my like potential I've Like how much of my actual uh, possible creative intellectual output or production has been foregone by like my compliant, obedient willingness to jump through all of these fucking hoops that academia is just filled with, that like urban, social, political milieus are filled with. And I'm just about totally fed up, basically. And man, the more I look into all the different crazy stuff that people are doing with the internet and self-publishing and basically inventing new monetization models and all these different experiments going on right now, the more I read about it, the more I'm just like, this is awesome. These people are really cool, first of all. It's just impressive, like when people just say they don't give a fuck and but they're also really smart and they plan things out and they're like, yeah, there's just so many interesting people doing interesting stuff. And when I was like back in the day, when I was like an aspiring academic and I still like believed in academia, I would look at that kind of stuff like self-publishing and I would just kind of be like, I would almost like pity them. It's in retrospect, it's such a stupid and arrogant and just inaccurate, really, way to think about it. But I guess I needed to think that to justify like all of the like annoying like work that I was doing that I didn't want to be doing. And so yeah, I used to look at it as kind of like sad, like, oh, these people are self-publishing because they can't get into academia or something like this. I think I'm totally guilty of having that just instinctive kind of perspective on it. And now the more I read about like what people are doing with self-publishing and all these different types of models, the more I'm kind of like, wow, these people are just badass. Like this is awesome and it's interesting and it sounds like, I don't know, it's just like a challenge. Like I'm kind of like, I wonder if I could do something like this. And then you start to think like, I have this idea that I think could really work. And then you're like, wow, I wonder what would happen. I'm just like, so I'm going deep down the rabbit hole. I'm like, I'm really being pulled more and more towards, I feel like my goal is kind of the way that I see myself in an ultimate sense, the way that I see my life project and my kind of future tactical or strategic plan. I see it changing in a fundamental kind of way, slowly, but I think I'm going through a really pivotal few years because more and more it's really starting to look to me like the greatest intellectuals of our generation and the next generation are probably going to get a part of their greatness from their willingness to take this sort of risk, refuse to do all of the time wasting and energy wasting hoop jumping that the traditional institutions require of you, but they're going to be just as good, they're going to be just as like high level, but they're going to basically not ask permission for anything and they're going to do it completely on their own. I think it's already slowly happening, and I think more and more, and the reason I think this is because as someone who's been on the inside of academia, it's like this is a mathematical claim that I'm making here. Basically, it's that to rise in the ranks of any of the mainstream like prestige institutions, you have to give like literally at least 50% of your creative intellectual potential to plainly, blatantly non-intellectual activities. You have to dump it into a sink, basically. Meetings, all kinds of social politicking and kind of stuff all this kinds of stuff, looking for grants, whatever, even just like bullshit, like, having to like look a certain way and act a certain way or whatever. Like the gains that people will make from just not doing any of that time wasting stuff and just fucking writing books. I mean, it's so exciting. My heart starts racing because I'm kind of like, if I just dropped everything and I just fucking wrote books and I did nothing else, and when I'm done with one, all I do is I hire an editor, I have them clean it up, have them kind of improve the structure or whatever, make some recommendations, I pay a proofreader, I just pay someone to do all of that work, but I write the fucking book, I pay someone to clean it up, and then I publish it, and then I immediately get on to the next one. If that's what I did for like the next 5 years, my heart is like racing with excitement and joy, thinking about like I could be so fucking productive. I could do some really, really cool shit, I believe. I think I could make a real dent on a lot of important questions and topics that right now not a lot of people are making much of a dent on, because they are kind of overly glued into these like mainstream time-sucking institutions where you're constantly asking for permission and constantly waiting. So yeah, the more I think about it, the more I look at this, the more I'm like, this is here for the taking. Like if you like really smart people who want to do really significant and radical creative intellectual work, if you really want to take a shot at having like a really great and meaningful, impactful long-term intellectual life, I think you're going to have to do it through this route, and people are going to do it eventually. People are already doing it, but I think I think it's becoming irresistible is what I'm getting at. And I'm an academic. I'm someone who already has a foot in the door of like the prestige stuff that a lot of people covet. That's why I think my experience is interesting. Like it's not just because I think I'm interesting. It's that I have the prestige thing that people want, and if I have it, and from the inside it's not even that good, it's not even good enough anymore to keep me within it, and I'm willing to basically like shit on all of it to just have the internet, that's a strong signal of something, because you don't see that very much. There are lots of brilliant people doing awesome stuff purely on the internet. But what you haven't seen yet is a kind of mass defection from institutions like academia. There are still lots of really smart, creative, and often, quite radical, incisive thinkers who are still 100% invested in academia, and they think it's the way to go, and that they believe that is the way to have the most significant, impactful intellectual life. You're not seeing many of those people in the past few years. You haven't seen many of those people kind of look around and be like, this actually sucks, and it's a waste of time, and I'm just going to go on the internet. You haven't seen much of that. You see some of it, I think, but I'm not claiming to be like completely unprecedented or anything like that, but you don't see very much of that. And that's what I'm seeing in my own life. That's what the lay of the land looks like to me, and I think that's new. I think this is new. So I could be wrong. I could just be weird, but my wager is we are at an inflection point. I do think that we are now at a point where because it's only recently that academia has become so bad. I think it's now basically becoming intolerable for anyone who's like a really honest, radical thinker who has like a strong desire to express like freely. I think we are now reaching a breaking point or an inflection point, because currently it's only now at a point where it's not even worth fighting to be in. And that's also because, remember, the impact premium, the reach that you get from being an academic, the actual effect that an academic, credibility has on your public profile and your, the effect it has on public trust of you, and all of that is decreasing too, as I've talked about and written about. So those two things, that it's getting more and more intolerable and insufferable, and also that the platform it gives you, the credibility and trust and prestige that it gives you, is itself becoming less and less valuable or less and less effective. I think those curves, have crossed at a point where now there's just no reason to stay, and there's every reason to go full throttle on the internet. And so, yeah, I think I've talked about that enough for tonight. I think that is basically the vector that I'm on, and I think if I can understand it explicitly and kind of tell that story from the inside, but also make sense out of it in a larger kind of empirical way, I think that would kind of put my finger on the pulse of something new and really significant that not many people have really been able to fully explicate. I've been watching the Netflix show featuring Marie Kondo, and I really enjoy this. I've been having it on in the background while I do work. It's very, very pleasant. Oh, I'll tell you why in a second, but I forgot I was answering someone else's question. Sorry, that was an epic tangent I went on. Right, so the create space and Kickstarter is what got me down that rabbit hole. And yeah, no one has really done, or maybe someone has, but it's not the common mold to do Kickstarter and then print on demand through Amazon. But I think there might be a way to do it, and that's one of the things I'm looking into. I'm trying to find out if no one does this for a really good reason, or if no one does it because they haven't figured out how to do it yet. So I'm still figuring that out. One of the reasons why people do their own print run, they just order a bunch of books themselves and then mail it out to people, is because it's way cheaper. So like you can get, like 700 books printed for like, $5,000 or something like that. And that's what most Kickstarters do. If you're self-publishing a book on Kickstarter, that's what most of them do. But man, that seems like a lot of work, and I don't especially want to be in the business of like actually packing and shipping shit. But yeah, I'm basically finalizing like a lot of these details now. I'll just kind of make a decision ultimately. There's too many choices is the problem, and if I were to do this when the time comes, I'll take my best guess at a model that I think would work. I'll keep you posted on that for sure. You're going to be hearing lots about that, no doubt. So what else? What was the other question? Oh, someone remind me. I forget. That I said I would answer. In the meantime, I'll tell you why I like Marie Kondo so much. Well, it's not that I like her so much, but I like the show. The show is hilarious. It is an awesome, awesome look into kind of middle-class American life. Okay, so I'll return to that. Thanks for reminding me, Pedro. Right, the question was about the rap song. Yeah, so I told you a while ago, I did my part of it. I promise you. I assure you. I wrote a set of lyrics, and then I recorded the lyrical track, and then I sent it to the person who wrote me and wanted to produce it, but I'm sure they just got too busy or whatever. I don't blame them for, letting this fall through the cracks. I can't imagine that producing a rap song for free for some crazy academic like white boy who has no musical talent is very high on his or her list of priorities. So yes, I can't fault that person. However, it now looks to me like I have to conclude that they are not going to, that they're not interested in doing it. So thank you for asking. It's good to know people actually are interested. I don't know why you would be. It's not going to be good. But I might also tell you that on my podcast with the Girls Chat, the Ashley Olsen person and the Job Haver person on Twitter, I did a rap for them. They asked me to write a rap. I said sure, I can whip something up, and they actually made music and put music behind it. So if you want to hear one demo, consider that a demo. It's like just a demo. You could hear that on the Girls Chat podcast that I did with them. But okay, so the ultimate response to this question, people, is: are there any music producers out there listening to this? You don't have to be that good. I'm not a very good rapper, so all you need is energy and a will to do it, and the ability to follow through. So I'm now open to other producers, and so yeah. So I basically like the workflow that I want to kind of get into is like I record the audio. With no music, I just rap my lyrics, and then I send you the audio track, and then you work your magic and make a best-selling jam out of it. Yeah, Thunderbirds, I could make a beat for myself, but I got enough things I'm trying to do, and I'm not especially trying to learn how to make music. I have very little musical interest or capacity. Well, I like writing. I mean, I have a musical interest a little bit, but not like in the production of musical sounds. Like, I have very weakly developed sense for like sophisticated sound pleasure. I have quite simple and base tastes, I think, when it comes to music, my interest is usually like more social and political and verbal about different songs and artists or whatever. And I like writing, so I'm definitely game to keep trying my hand at the rap game. So if there is a producer out there and you want to produce one of my rap songs, I'm looking for a long-term relationship ideally. So I just turn out the rap and you do the music. Ideally, what this is really all about is getting to the point where I have a crew. I really, really want to have a crew, like a studio. Ideally, where like you and me and a bunch of people would like meet regularly and smoke weed and lay down tracks and shit. I literally don't even know what lay down tracks means. I don't know why they call it lay down. I guess it's just like a metaphor or a simile. Going back to like train tracks, I guess is that. I have no clue. But right. So that's where we're at on the rap song. I promise that I wasn't just trolling. I wasn't just flossing. I was I was flossing because I'm always flossing, but I also was actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Unfortunately, my initial producer is a little preoccupied. What else? All right, just 3 quick points I want to make. The first one is about Marie Kondo. The second one is about Satanism and its prevalence in our culture. This shows Sabrina the Teenage Witch. If you remember that from the 90s, if you're a millennial, you probably do. They're doing a remake of it, but it is very, very different. And it's literally satanic. And I'm not even being provocative. I'll tell you about it in a minute. And then I want to tell you about my grandparents. I want to end it on a wholesome note. Marie Kondo. It's hilarious. The way these like middle class people, a lot of them, like their houses are pretty nice, and it's not that bad. Like a lot of them, at least the ones I've seen so far, I've watched like the first 3, I think. They're not that bad at all. They're like pretty nice. They're just lived in. Like, there's some clutter, there's some stuff here and there. But like it's not like hoarders, they're not that bad at all. But it's like super kind of the editing for these types of shows, they always impose these kind of like epic emotional narratives. So it's hilarious because these people are these like well-to-do middle class people who just like have a little bit too much stuff, whatever. It's just hilarious to see them like crying to Marie Kondo, like literally crying because of their sadness about the stress and the suffering that their like few too many belongings cause them. It's just hilarious, and I love shows like that because it just puts your life in perspective. Like I love seeing like overworked middle class people like really I mean, I don't like to see anyone sad, so I don't want to say that exactly, but there's something that is very useful, I think, let's say, it's useful to watch or to see how people who have a lot can be so kind of worked up about ridiculous things. Oh, and another thing that I think is cool about that show is it really helps you see kind of how middle class people, like middle class Americans, who are like doing well financially, like most of the people on the show, they're doing pretty well. Like Marie Kondo is not going into like poor people's homes to help them, change their life with the magic of tidying up. She's going to mostly like well-to-do, nice homes. And something that I kind of thought about watching it, because I'm currently kind of I'm probably going to be transitioning from like a fairly middle class, decent income, like secure kind of life situation to like, I don't know, I might be poor in like 5 months. I really I have no clue. So since I'm in this kind of like between worlds moment, I'm kind of like looking at my own self over the past few years a little bit differently. Like I kind of see myself, I think, a little bit more clearly, because one of the things you do when you're like working a lot and and like your status and your sense of identity is kind of like built into it. Like obviously working class people work a lot. I'm not saying I work harder or more than many working class people. Um, but when it's a job that you like take your homework, when you take your work home with you, and also your like ego and identity are kind of wrapped up in it, that does bring a kind of a different kind of uniquely greater um, kind of like stress or anxiety or intensity to like an intense working life. And so when you're in that when you're in that situation, you it kind of comes built with a propensity to buy things. And I mean, I've never been that bad with it. Like, we've never bought that much stuff, but there are a few different kind of mechanisms for it, and it's quite interesting. And I think you see it kind of in the show, or you see its kind of most dramatic and hilarious fruits in the show, because like when you're working, when you're like super kind of stressed out and working a lot in this kind of like job that you feel is kind of like controlling you, and that you kind of can't step out of, you well one factor or mechanism is you feel like you deserve um, something nice. Like you feel like, surely if I'm submitting to this like suffering, surely there should be material rewards kind of corresponding to it. And so even if you don't want something, even if you don't desire a new object, there's this weird kind of built-in psychological compensation for the stressful careerism. So there's this like tendency to kind of accumulate stuff that you don't need or use, or that's not really significant or meaningful to you. And I think that's kind of interesting, because you see that with these people. Like, these people on the, they have what looks to be like quite good, comfortable lives. And then Marie Kondo starts talking about them, and they have like all of these, they have all of this like weird emotional baggage, and they have and their house is filled with like stuff, and it's like messy, and they hate themselves for it. And it's like, well, it's not that much stuff. And if you are suffering so much from having this, clutter that you don't want around you, why don't you just clean it? Why don't you just fix it up? It doesn't require like this is what I'm getting at. It doesn't require the cases that she's doing. They don't actually require some like radical overhaul, some like magical new method from a guru. They're usually like not that bad. And so it's like, why don't these middle class people just do it? And that's what's so interesting, because I know why they don't do it, because I've been kind of in that state of mind over the past few years. And it's because they're like they're locked in to a kind of like demonic possession, like middle class life in America today, because you do have to work really hard, basically, to you need two incomes that are full time, doing like some type of pretty serious kind of career of some kind, to have like a nice house in a desirable city, and to be like financially secure and able to retire. Like, you do have to lock yourself down into a satanic lifelong careerist kind of machinery. And that's what you see in in the Marie Kondo Netflix show. And it's just kind of hilarious, to be honest. The other thing that is hilarious about the show is like they treat her like a god, and she does some like really wacky, like mystical, spiritual stuff. And it's like, I'm kind of like shaking my damn head. I'm like, you secular heathen middle class bourgeois Americans who stick your nose up at people who go to church will literally sit on the floor of your living room with a Japanese woman who you don't even know, and engage in literally like religious, like vague, unstated, unexplained, decontextualized, religious, mystical rituals with her, like following her lead, to like cleanse your house of bad energy. And I just find that so hilarious. I find that so hilarious that like educated, cosmopolitan, often liberal types of people think that like Christianity or religion is stupid or passe, or for country bumpkins or something like that, is what a lot of people think about traditional religion. And 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 these people are the dumbest kind of suckers for like any type of new age spiritual um, salve for the aching in their soul. And it's literally kind of funny because she doesn't, explain, the show doesn't explain anything about her spirituality or what is the background or what is the meaning or what is the tradition. Is she Buddhist? Is she this? Is she that? It doesn't even try to explain any of that. She's just this like high energy, super smiley, petite Japanese woman who comes into people's homes and then says things like, okay, now kneel on the floor and we're going to thank your house. And oh, and the other thing is she's like an animist basically. Like Marie Kondo is the return and popularization of straight up animism, because she basically talks as if all of the objects in your home have she anthropomorphizes them really. She like she tells people to thank her clothes, to thank your clothes, and she has this like funny thing she does about books, where like you lay your books out. You're supposed to lay all your books out, and then when they're sitting in a pile, you go around and you tap them. You tap them, and she calls that waking them up. She says you have to wake up your books. So it's like everything in your house is like a living thing basically, and you have to talk to it, and it's hilarious to watch these like middle class Americans do this at her behest. It's really good entertainment, especially for like if you are working on your computer and you want something in the background. I've been enjoying it personally, but you might not. I'm not exactly recommending it, but I have been finding it pleasant background fascination. Much more importantly, however, is this remake of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. All right, question. Who in the rap game do you take inspiration from? How hard are my bars? Good question, Thunderbird. I'll answer that real quick. My favorite rappers, I mean, look, as I said before, I'm not cool. Like, I don't know music. I'm not good at music. I don't even know what's really hip or cool. Obviously, I have a sense of like what's popular a little bit, but I'm not some music snob. I don't pretend to have sophisticated takes, although I've never really written about it or talked about it. Maybe I do have sophisticated takes, but I haven't expressed them. You'll have to wait and see. So I'll just tell you straight up. I tend to basically like the rap that's more like melodic, kind of like the brainier, more cerebral rappers, and that have like a little bit more singing involved and a little bit more kind of poppy melodies. I think melody is the right word. See, I don't even know like the difference between like melody and rhythm and tempo, and I vaguely do, but I can hardly use those words. So for instance, like I'm a big fan of Drake. I like Kendrick Lamar. I like Chance the Rapper, some songs by Chance the Rapper. I like Frank Ocean. I'm a big fan of Frank Ocean. He's kind of my current fave. So when are we getting a video on psychedelic Catholicism? That's a really good question. Well, when I go to Rome this weekend, maybe I can get some psychedelics. Depends if I mean, I don't know. I doubt it. I'm not going to be doing anything illegal. If you're watching this, FBI. I'm just saying, hypothetically. Right, so the much more important issue that we need to talk about is this remake of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I'm not kidding you. Literally, it is the endorsement and dramatization of Satanism, basically. And I'm not even trying to be provocative. Like actual Satan is one of the major characters. There's this, I mean, I'd only watched it very vaguely. It was on in the back. My wife was watching it on the background when she was doing computer work. And so I only got like glimpses of it. And then but I did clarify that my impression was correct with my wife. And basically, if you remember, that was a classic show, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, that if you're a millennial, you probably grew up watching it, like I did. It was kind of more for girls, like I didn't watch it that much, but I was aware of it. And definitely watched it a bit. Basically, I forget the story, but it was kind of like a comedy kids show. It was like pretty lighthearted, uplifted kind of show about a young girl who had like witch powers. So she was like secretly a witch. But it was like goofy and fun kind of. It was, if I recall correctly, that was kind of the mood. Why do I organize my bookshelf by color? I don't. Thank you for asking, but my wife just wanted to do it. We've never done it before, actually, before this house, and I don't think we'll do it again. I was never a fan of it personally, but she just wanted to try it when we moved in. So, you know what they say, happy wife, happy life. If she wants something and it's not going to hurt me or anyone else, I'm happy to say, you go, girl. But yeah, I'm not a fan either, personally. I mean, it does look cool, but you can't find books. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, you know, yeah, you get the idea. You try to look them up by title or alphabetical order, and you don't know where they are. Anyway, much more pressing matters. Stop distracting me. Just kidding. It's fine. You can ask me questions. Right, so that was Sabrina the Teenage Witch. You might remember it. Whatever. Just a kid. It was like a kid show. It was uplifting, if I remember correctly. They're doing a remake on Netflix. And throat's getting dry now. We're 1 hour deep, 1 hour and 5 minutes deep. The remake on Netflix, it's a totally different kind of reimagining of it. And yeah, there was a talking cat. Good one, Joe. I remember that. And basically, the remake, I didn't get all the details, but there's like this satanic, literally satanic cult, basically. That she's being like socialized into, like it's her father and her mother, like her family are basically part of this literally satanic group. Like Satan is the leader of it, and she's young, and she's basically, they're trying to kind of induct her into this kind of satanic group and lifestyle and future. And so she's like learning about her powers and stuff like that, and being encouraged to kind of go through these satanic rituals to become fully, you know, one with Satan. And get this, listen to this. Basically, the plot is that she protests. She refuses. She says, no, I don't want to join your satanic cult. I want to be free to be a modern liberal person, and I'm 15 years old, but I want to be able to make out with my boyfriend in the high school halls. And, you know, like all these shows, she's very sexualized. It's really disturbing. I mean, like, I'm seriously, I'm not just trying to be like a provocatively over the top, like conservative grandpa or anything, but I'm genuinely, I'm horrified by how common and normal it is to sexualize characters in movies, that female characters that are supposed to be like 15 years old. You know, you can like see her cleavage and stuff, and she's like making out with people like really heavily and like in school and stuff like that. And it's like, I really do, I'm sorry, but I just find that to be like deeply sinister for society as a whole. But be that as it may, she's basically saying, I want to be a modern, liberal, free person, and that's why I will not join your satanic cult. Think about that for a minute. Think about that story structure. It's very similar to one of the most classic kind of Western story structures, which is, you know, it's like the Faustian bargain, right? It's like the wish to be free, right? The wish to do what you want and just pursue pleasure and individual liberty. That is traditionally associated with the satanic temptations. That is on the side of Satan. That has as its endpoint hell and Satan. That is the overwhelmingly kind of standard, traditional, Western, Judeo-Christian story mold. And countless stories have been told in that mold, more or less, with that structure, or kind of implicit arrangement of references. So think about what this means, that now on Netflix, this show has a young person who is being inducted into a cult, so that explicitly, you know, Satan is this like bad thing, right? So that's good. It seems like, okay, it seems ethical. That's good. She's protesting against Satan. Very good. But think about how insidious it is that kind of social liberalism and just kind of free-for-all moral laxity is the good thing, the kind of alternative to the Satan that she is rebelling against. In other words, it's like um, it's basically the exact inversion of Christianity, in other words. And think about how insidious that is. And I, like, you may or may not be Christian. I'm not, like, I've never been, I mean, most of you know my own kind of views on religion, but I've never been, this is not like a Christian channel. I don't like push this. I don't really care if people don't, I really don't care what people's religion is generally. But surely we can all agree that Satanism is generally a philosophy that we would all prefer to stay away from. I know that there's like an ironic kind of hipster, cool, like nihilist, Satanist kind of sect on the internet. You know, I know that this is a meme and this is a kind of weird subculture. But, I mean, personally, I don't take that really seriously. So I think that's mostly like aesthetic signaling. You know, they're trying to express a certain kind of mood. In some sense, like, almost by definition, as Western individuals, like we our most basic sense of good and evil and right and wrong is like deeply linked to you know, a kind of aversion, I should say. I'm sorry, aversion to evil. And yeah, so I just thought it's pretty profound, I think, when you think about what's going on with that show, right? Because typically it's like God is the father, the good, the kind of requirements of a true ethical life. That's the heavy, difficult, hard, oppressive, fatherly thing that young people want to rebel against. And, you know, their desire to be free and to have pleasure is the source of much evil, because if they pursue that without any type of superego, then they're going to be on a vector towards self-destruction quite rapidly, and social destruction also. And so, yeah, I mean, Netflix is a source of some very, very strange and, how should we say, problematic content. But I mean, that really kind of took it to a new level for me. I was like, wow, this is like explicitly a satanic show. Well, no, it's worse than explicitly satanic. Obviously, if it just said Satan is great, everyone should love Satan, Satan is the good guy in this Netflix series, that probably wouldn't work so well. Precisely because we do have these like deep intuitions that Satan is generally not a desirable person to root for or be on the team of. And yeah, so they can't do that. So if Satan really, really, truly wanted to infect your culture and take over your brains, how would Satan do it? Satan would do it by inverting the Christian template, for which we are pretty now hardwired, or at least deeply, you know, soft-wired, so that basically the all of the traditional kind of Christian machinery is running, and it's to the greater glory of Satan. It's to the greater glory of evil, who has usurped the place of God, quite unbeknownst to us fallen heathens. And folks, I would say we're there. We are there. It's happening. It's real. It's here. Sorry, I think there were some interesting comments that looked thoughtful from Ashwin and other people, but I was just trying to finish my thoughts. So unfortunately, I'm not able to see the chat history for very long on the iPhone. Not to be shilling, but I will remind you that a super chat would go to my iPad, just like I set up last time. So if you really wanted to make sure I see something, I'm not just saying that to extract your money from your coffers, but literally that would, so I have my iPad right here, so I would be able to see it that way, and it wouldn't be lost in the moving history. All right, folks, I got one last topic I want to talk about, which is my grandparents and grandparents in general. And then I'll see you on your way this evening. By the way, real quick, the Discord is kicking off, so if you want to get in on the Discord server, it's been very active lately. We've got a lot of new members. So if you're looking for like a community of people that want to talk about these sorts of themes and are interested in the same stuff I'm interested in, we have like, I think more than 100 people now. And so, yeah, if you want to, you send me a DM. or whatever, just get my, you know, get my attention somehow on the internet and ask me for an invite, and I'll give you one. Just DM me on Twitter or send me an email, whichever you want, and I'll let you in. So, grandparents. Basically, I was just thinking, and I just wanted to share this thought and a couple observations. I was just thinking recently about how badass my grandparents are. And it got me thinking, like, they really just don't make people like this anymore. It's a really good way, I think, to look into and see and intuit how much our culture has changed over the past few decades. Because, like, my grandparents, oh gosh, Pedro says, your grandfather died this morning. I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope you're not trolling me. And if that's the case, I'm very, very sorry. And my thoughts are with you. My prayers are with you. And if you look at, like, your grandparents, I don't know what yours are like, but mine, the two that are alive right now, my mom's mom and my dad's dad, they're just extremely emotionally and psychologically and intellectually, I mean, they're not intellectuals exactly, but still, they're intellectually just extremely firm, is one way to put it. Like, they know what they think, they know what they know, they know what they believe, and nothing's gonna throw them off of that. And it got me thinking, because, like, there's certain things they say and they do that you just don't see that much anymore. And yeah, I don't know. Like, when I think about their qualities and traits, I'm just kind of like, it seems like these traits are going extinct, maybe, because I don't know what I'm saying exactly. Maybe this is just, maybe old people are always like this or something like that, and I'm just lionizing my grandparents. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of, like, my grandfather, for instance, he's pretty crazy man. He's, like, very, he's pretty wild. He's kind of like a wild man. He's 80 years old, and he, I'm trying to think, I don't want to betray any confidences, so I have to think a little carefully. Well, it's at the end of a YouTube video. I don't think this is going to get back to my grandfather, who's 80 years old. Also, I don't think he would really mind, necessarily. He's 80 years old, and he still uses Viagra, and just for fun. And I don't even, like, no one even knows exactly what he's doing with it. Like, I don't know if he's, like, you know, like, dating or, like, hooking up with people. Apparently, did you know this, that STDs are a major problem in the senior citizen communities? Because apparently they all like to fuck and they don't use protection. I guess at that age, you know, you think you don't have anything to worry about. But yeah, so I'm just like, that's interesting. I don't know where I was going with that, by the way. That was neither here nor there. But more generally, like, they have my grandfather and my grandmother, both on different sides of the family. They're just, like, they don't give a shit what people think about them, and they say exactly what they want. And sometimes, like, when you encounter people like that, you kind of, like, you can kind of only see this in their behaviors, but, and kind of from a unique angle, in a momentary glimpse. But sometimes it just seems to me like old people today have, that's a good way of putting it, their dialogue is less undermined by the narratives of modernity. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Like, I think one way to put it is that modern people today, modern young people, before they say or do anything, there's like a million calculations about who's going to find this acceptable, who's going to find this unacceptable. It's like this deep kind of optimizing process, mostly geared towards social appearances. You know, so like when young people today choose words, they're mostly choosing words to satisfy the preferences of different people socially, to advance like some instrumental goal. And I think that's just way more intense now than it used to be. To the point that like a lot of people today, they've lost the capacity to like just have a pure thought and then express it in whatever first words come to mind. And then if someone challenges them or like says, you're a bad person for saying that, they think, no, actually, I'm not a bad person. I believe I'm a good person. And if you tell me I'm a bad person, I just don't believe you. You know, like that's a natural way to think for older people. Like they really kind of think it's a free country, you know, that expression, it's a free country, but they take that seriously. They're like, no, I actually do get to think whatever I think. And I can say it however I want. And there's actually nothing you can do. And I actually don't care. It's just like, it's people, there are some people today who say that and perform that. And maybe, you know, there are some young people who do really have access to that posture and it's authentic for them. Um, but my sense is that that's literally just harder and harder to access for younger people today who spend so much of their formative years doing this like hyper instrumental social optimization process that's very intense and cutthroat. Um, is the university Stasi monitoring this stream? I don't know. I don't care. I doubt it. They probably watch them somewhat out of curiosity, but I can't imagine any of them have the wherewithal to watch 81 minutes of me. So, I mean, maybe, but whatever. Um, right. So, yeah, my sense is just like, I think when you hang out with old people, it's really cool because you kind of can get, some of it might be life cycle effects, but I do think that there's kind of generational effects where you can kind of like see in old people, you're like, this is what people used to be like before they got fucked up. You know, obviously there's no golden age. Obviously, it's all relative. Obviously, people probably think this in every generation. So how new is it really? Those are all valuable and perfectly fine questions and challenges to what I'm saying. But nonetheless, it's interesting anyway. And it can be real and meaningful anyway, even if it happens to some degree every generation. But I like that. And so that was just my little how should I put it, my little pay on to my grandparents and to how badass old people are, because they represent a kind of strength and firmness that I think has been gradually eroded over the past several decades, and which I just find very refreshing. I find it very inspiring. And for that reason, you know, I really value my grandparents. Tips on overcoming anxiety. I feel terrible when I don't speak my mind in class, but I don't have the courage to be authentic. It's a very good question. It's difficult. Is the black hoodie bursting out of the cardigan a conscious or unconscious comment on your academic position? Nice. No, it's mostly just a comment on how it's cold in my house. Also, like, I don't want to look too good, you know? I don't want to be one of those YouTubers, those male YouTubers who are like, their hair is all nicely cut and clean, and they have a nice coif, or whatever it's called. Coif, is that a word? Where they, semantic apocalypse, not going to affect the old folks, bro. Yeah, exactly. You know, these like very posh, handsome looking male YouTubers. Oh, I find that disgusting. Like, men are just not attractive. Don't try to be attractive. Men are brutish and ugly. Just put on a cardigan and put your hood up and, you know, embrace that physical beauty is not our gender's strong suit, and focus on saying something meaningful and distinguishing yourself through the content of your words and deeds. That is what I say to other men on YouTube. When am I getting a fash cut? I'm not getting a fash cut. I'm not a fascist. Right, going back to the question though of how do you deal with anxiety, if you want to talk about what you think and feel. Yeah, there's really no easy solution to that. I would say for me, you do that by practicing in like really, really small steps gradually. Gen Z and millennials might not be able to create culture to over-socialize and lacking differentiation. Yeah, I completely agree. I really do think that's true. Obviously, I mean, they can create culture and they will. You know, like Lil Xan, one of my other favorite rappers. But no, I mean, you're obviously right that this over socialization, this like tendency to be obsessed with not, with choosing words to optimize for social functions. I mean, that is a really, really rapid and surefire way to atrophy your basic capacities to think and create. 100% definitely think that. And so, yeah, if you do that too much, you really do have to wonder, like, are you actually going to be able to think anything interesting after even a few years of doing that? So the costs of doing that are tremendous. And maybe that goes back to the question that was asked about anxiety speaking up. Like, you got to think about how, like, if you have anxiety saying what you think to a crowd of people or even to a small group of people that might not like it, well, you're probably thinking about it in terms of, if I say something bad, or if I say something that I think and other people find it bad, then something bad is going to happen to me. But that's not true in almost all cases. Even if they kind of dislike it or they dislike you because of it, even then still, most of the time, they don't actually have anything, they don't actually have real power over you. There's usually very little that they can do to really destroy you. And that's one part of it. Like, people, of course, sometimes there are cases where you can be destroyed for something that you think. But I'm saying if you generally have anxiety speaking up, that's a more general diffuse problem, then in a lot of those cases, you actually can get away with saying something. And in a lot of cases, nothing bad is actually going to happen to you. You're just kind of afraid that it might. So that's one thing. You're usually overestimating the negative consequences of someone disliking something you say. But then also, another thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is that when you don't say the thing you want to say, you're actually doing damage to yourself. And you should experience it that way. Like, people think, if I just keep my mouth shut, I'm protecting myself. But that's not true. You're just causing direct but invisible damage and negative consequences. And you lose something. Like, you lose something in yourself. I really, really think that. Something inside of you dies. Like, every time that you have a thought that you want to share, that you think should be sharing, I'm not saying necessarily you have to say everything as soon as it comes to mind, but as long as it's not like sheer impulsiveness, if you have an observation or a thought that you think is true and pertains to the situation, and you have a drive and wish, a considered wish to say it, and then you don't do it, something dies inside of you. I really do think that. And the harm is real and it's direct. It might not be massive in that particular moment, but it's real and it's direct. And once you start doing that a little bit, then you start doing it more and more, because why not? If you do it once, then you might as well do it the next way, the next time the same way. And so, yeah, I would say, like, you have to lose the illusion that biting your tongue is the cheap, easy way to protect yourself, because it's not. It takes a major toll. And in fact, I have found, and I have always found, that every time I've kind of like said something in any situation where I was like conscious that I was kind of sticking my neck out a little bit, almost every single time, even if there's like one or two major haters, or even if there's someone like powerful who wants to like really come down on me hard for it, every single time, the net effect has been that like a larger number of people have liked me more, or a total, the total sum of social liking that I was receiving basically increased on net. Maybe not immediately, but very quickly after, and certainly in the long run. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I mean, I think the general rule is you don't want to ever choose your words with like social optimization in mind. In any way, you want to choose words in a way that's completely orthogonal to instrumental calculations, is what I believe. But it is a useful kind of mind hack, or whatever you want to call it, to kind of assuage the selfish instrumental parts of yourself, to remind yourself that, ironically, sticking your neck out when you really believe something is also the selfish thing to do. Like, it actually does tend to win in the long run in terms of people admiring you and respecting you. So those would be just some observations on yeah, just some ways to think that might maybe help you if you're struggling with that. All right, folks. You know what? For a couple weeks off, for the few weeks that I've took off for holiday, I was afraid that I would be a little rusty, but I gotta admit, folks, that was a damn good live stream. If I do say so myself. I was quite content with that one. I got a lot off my chest, and frankly, I've been a little repressed lately. I think from not doing the live streams and kind of taking some time off for the holidays. I think I was starting to kind of accumulate too many thoughts and feelings that weren't getting outlet. So you should have way more subs. Why, thank you. Well, you can subscribe now and you can like the video and share it. You know, if you really like this stuff and you think I should have more subscribers, then, you know, you can help make that happen. I appreciate that. I mean, I might have a lot more time for doing this kind of stuff more seriously. So, oh, one other thing I forgot to tell you folks. Don't worry, I'm not going to become like one of these like tech reviewer YouTubers, but I did just get something, and this is an investment by me into my YouTube channel and into my presence on the internet. Honestly, it seemed like I was high, like when Joe smokes. Who's Joe? Joe, and well, sorry, his messages disappear too quickly. Well, you never know. You never know what I've been doing before my live streams, do you? But you can take your guesses. Right. Anyway, I just want to share real quickly that I have recently made a little investment in my internet machinery. I've been very happy, I think, with the past year, like all the stuff I've made and the response that I've gotten, and it's been really, really interesting and fun, and it feels very worthwhile. And especially because a few of you are now giving me money each month, that's really, really emboldening and kind of makes me very grateful, and it makes me think like I want to work harder and harder to invest in what I'm doing and make what I'm doing better, and to really grow out kind of the most effective, highest quality kind of intellectual project on the internet that I can possibly develop. And so partially as a Christmas gift, but partially as a way to double down or invest back a little bit into my production quality, because I know a lot of things I do, they're very like DIY. A lot of the stuff I make, it's not super nice in terms of production quality. I've decided 2019 I'm going to try to make some small but hopefully, you know, noticeable improvements in production quality. So I present to you, just today I got off of Gumtree, which is like the British version of eBay basically, or Craigslist really. I got myself a new camera. Check it out. It's not a super fancy one, but it's, can you see it? It's not super fancy, but it's going to be a noticeably higher quality than what you're used to seeing on my YouTube video. It's a Panasonic G7. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's one of the cameras that people recommend as like a relatively cheap kind of entry level but high quality. Like, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's widely recommended as like if you want to take one step up from kind of like doing the basic like webcam stuff that I've been doing. If you want to kind of up the level a little bit into something a little bit more professional, but still like not spend mad money, this is widely recommended as one of the popular and really good cameras for that type of move. Obviously, I couldn't go crazy because if I'm going to lose my job, I might have serious financial issues, potentially not too long. But so I needed something. I really wanted to kind of do something to increase the production quality this year, but without breaking the bank. So I think I did mad research and yeah, decided to do that. Especially because if I am going to lose my job or something crazy like that, like if my life's about to change in a fundamental way, in some sense, you know, my blog and video on the internet and these sorts of things they might very well become my main and only formats, you know? I don't know, it's interesting. Like I might just stop writing academic articles altogether. I might still here and there if I want to, but more and more I think maybe what might happen is I'm just going to invest, I'm just going to write on the internet, and I'm going to make videos, and that's going to be the sole and primary formats through which I kind of develop my intellectual research agenda. So yeah, I'm going to continue to invest in it and try to make everything more beautiful, more effective, smoother. Oh, another thing I'll share with you real quick is just that I'm going to definitely keep doing live streams, and I'm going to keep doing conversations and stuff like that. But I think I'd like to do a little bit more experimentation with proper videos, you know, because I can kind of hit a pretty good stride when it comes to rambling on these live streams. Every now and then, you know, I can do a pretty damn good live stream where I talk for an hour straight about a bunch of different things, and it's a lot of good stuff that I have a lot of fun doing, and I'm happy that I did it. But live streaming it's really hard to do video live and make something that's lasting. Do you know what I mean? It's fun to do, and it's engaging, and because we can kind of talk with each other. But for rewatching it, for people who come to it later, and certainly for people who watch it, you know, it's not evergreen. You know, it's not going to be. Not many people are going to want to watch it in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years from now. Not many people are going to want to watch a live stream just because it's intrinsically kind of dated. You know, it's intrinsically kind of chronologically slippery and diffuse. There's lots of pauses and colloquialisms. And yeah, so I like doing these, and I'll continue to do them, but after a year or two kind of doing YouTube a lot, I'm kind of getting intrigued and challenged by the idea of making legit videos. You know, like I think I want to start trying serious philosophical and theoretical and political and social whatever commentary types of videos. I don't know exactly. I have a bit of a vision, but I'll have to just create it as I go. But yeah, I'd like to do some videos about kind of really interesting and significant ideas and concepts, but to do it in a way that's more elegant and more efficient and more polished, and that's more kind of fun to watch and effective to watch, and yeah, just more compelling and beautiful all around. So that's one of my kind of possible experimental goals, or it's just something that I want to play around a little bit more with making good videos. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I don't have that much skill or experience, but you know, I'm a pretty smart dude, pretty creative, I think, on average. So I'm sure I'll be able to figure out my way around Adobe Premiere and the different stuff that people use. All right, folks, at 98 minutes, my brain is clocking out. Want to tease some of the subjects that I have in mind? Very briefly, I mean, I want to do some philosophy videos is one thing. I'd like to make some videos about Deleuze, because I watched some videos about Deleuze, and, Deleuze, and a lot of them are so fucking boring. They're not bad necessarily, but my God, they're so fucking boring. And yeah, so I have some ideas of what I'd like to do, because then on the other hand, I watch YouTube videos that are, you know, philosophy videos and stuff like that are not boring, but then I don't agree with them. So it's like I've been watching enough videos that I'm starting to have my own critiques of them, and having those critiques makes me kind of feel like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna make like what I think this video should be like, you know. And so like I've been watching Doug Lane's videos also, and he like gets a lot of views. I'm pretty impressed and happy for him. And some of them are quite interesting. They're more kind of like splashy and fun, and they're a little bit more fun to watch. And you know, Doug is a perfectly astute and interesting guy. But you know, these reasonable people can have very different interpretations and emphases when it comes to, you know, philosophical figures such as Adorno or Deleuze. And yeah, basically all of the videos I've seen on YouTube about these types of people, many of whom you're very interested in and have a lot of familiarity with, and have very considered and strongly held personal kind of interpretive ideas about. Yeah, I would just like to, I'm feeling increasingly motivated to try my luck at producing some more polished and more enjoyable, elegant, and effective videos, kind of expressing some of my own interpretations, both of like historical thinkers, but then also, also developing some of my own ideas in videos, maybe. We'll see. I may or may not do it too much, but I'm definitely going to experiment a little bit. And yeah, so just wanted to share that. All right, folks, my brain is pooping out. So if you want to join the Discord, just shoot me a DM on Twitter, or send me an email or whatever. I'll send you a link. And I posted some new blog posts this week, so check those out if you haven't. And I'm going to be writing some more about the scandal, I guess you could call it, that I'm involved in. And so I'll be blogging about that. And I think I've said to you before, the easiest way to make sure you stay up on all of that stuff without being bombarded with information would be my email newsletter. There's a link in the description below. So I only send that out like once or twice a month. So that kind of gives you all the big things that are going on in my life and in my work and stuff like that. So you don't have to like try to follow all the different shit I'm putting out. And as always, huge thanks to all my patrons. Yeah, very grateful as always. And all right, this has been good. Thanks everyone. I'm glad to be back on the live streaming horse, and I'll be back on the air sooner than later. All right. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas or whatever else you celebrate. I don't say Happy Holidays. I say Christmas because that's what I celebrate, but I don't mean any disrespect. So anything you celebrate, I hope you had a good one of them. Bye, everybody. I wish you all the very best. How do I turn this